Every time I ask a fellow female colleague that also works in tech about if she faced discrimination at work, I usually get two types of answers. The first type is, yes, unfortunately, I do experience discrimination from time to time, gender discrimination. We work in a male-dominated industry, so yeah, unfortunately it happens. And the second type, nah, not really. Maybe it happens to someone else, but maybe I was just lucky, so no, I don't recall anything. But what happens next is when I give a person examples of what is considered a gender discrimination at work, almost all of them answer, that of course, yeah, that happened. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, really happy to see you back. And today we're tackling a complicated topic of gender discrimination. I'm a woman, I work in tech, it's a traditionally still quite male-dominated industry. So I faced a gender discrimination myself. But we should never make a universal judgment based on only our personal experience. And for that, we're blessed with scientific research, which is much more reliable than only one story of only one person who went through something. Though personal experience is also really important. So today I will try to combine both what I got from a lot of scientific researches on the topic and my personal experience and observations. Important disclaimer here, gender discrimination is a really complex topic, especially when it comes to how do we fight this type of discrimination. That's why there are a lot of opinions here, sometimes opinions that contradict one another and both are well justified. So what I encourage you to do is not to avoid reading these researchers yourself, to make your own personal judgment on the subject. You know, even in the scientific community, people disagree with each other, and this is also fine. Now, let's start with the most important thing, money. Pay gap is unfortunately real. Women on planet Earth are paid less. This gap is different in different countries, but women's salaries are lower. To be fair, a lot of things that used to contribute to this pay gap are going away right now. I would say the access to education, for example, is getting relatively good, so we cannot justify this pay gap by saying, oh, it's just women who are not educated enough, that's why they cannot perform the same type of job with the same quality. That's not true. But even if the access to education is relatively similar for men and women, there is still one big factor that still actively contributes to this pay gap, and it's children. In most of the countries in the world, women are assumed to be a default caregiver. Just imagine, you have a couple, they both work on the same job, they have a similar education, and they have a kid. What happens every time, for example, kid gets sick? In the majority of the cases, it's woman who is taking a day off to take care of the child. It would be woman that, for example, would reject a business trip, or maybe even start working part-time in order to provide enough care to her children. And while this happens slowly, step by step, men would get promoted, women would not get promoted. There is actually a research that shows on big numbers that after the first child, the salary of the father usually remains the same, and the salary of the mother usually drops. And the trend remains for many years afterwards. Of course, don't read it literally. It doesn't mean that the moment woman gave birth, someone reduced her salary. It means that when a woman is getting back to work, she finds herself in the environment that is prone to discrimination. The whole society around her demands a certain behavior from her. It demands her to take care of the child, not the father. That's why it creates unequal career opportunities at work. I've heard an argument once that women's salary drops after the first child because of the biological reasons. Maybe after giving birth, their working capacity kind of reduces. But here's the thing, the same research has been made for couples who adopted a child, and the trend still remains. No biological explanation. There is another argument that I've heard many times in my life. People say, yeah, statistics shows that there are not enough women in top management, but it's not because of the discrimination. It's because women just don't want to be in top management, they just don't want to be CEOs. So why do we even need to fight this if the reason is just they just don't want to? Why should we force them to have a career in the top management? This one drives me crazy every single time. Because actually one of the reasons why there are not enough women on a senior management position, on top management positions, is because in many countries, once you get married, once you get a baby, you don't have the same opportunities to continue working. Society expects you to stay at home with a kid. In many countries, paternity leave is still uncommon. So when I think of it, I usually imagine something like a funnel. The longer you work, the higher you are in the career ladder, the actually less chances you have to stay because of all these factors. So no, it's not a choice. It's just women who are doing a crazy amount of unpaid work at home. And yes, there are women that don't want to be CEOs. Surprise, there are men who don't want to be CEOs. There is another argument, a tough one. People say, let's look at how many female mathematicians are out there, how many female famous chess players are out there. You will see that there are less women there, and it's just self-explanatory, it's evidential. Men are just smarter at certain things. So maybe it's just the difference between male and female brain. Their answer is, no, it's not. There is a research that evaluated math results of girls and boys at school in different countries. And if you look at these numbers, you can actually really see that in many countries, the average math score of girls is lower than boys. So it's kind of easy to come from here to, okay, maybe we just have a different brain. But here's a plot twist. This trend actually correlates with the equality index in the country, meaning that in countries with the higher equality index, girls were showing higher math results than boys. So yes, in the countries where gender discrimination is deeply rooted in the society, where the girls from the very young age have been told that being good at math or physics is not really a girl's thing, these stereotypes, they influence young girls, and it becomes a vicious circle. Now, let's pass education and switch to hiring. In some professions, people tend to hire men more. And it happens because of the statistics discrimination. Let's take an example. Math, you're hiring a math teacher. As a person who is hiring, you kind of know much more famous men mathematicians than women. And in your head, it creates a kind of a status quo. It creates an impression that all good math experts are men. So the next time you will hire someone for this role, there is a chance that you will be biased because you may think, even subconsciously, oh, okay, men are good at math, so yeah, I would rather hire men. And yeah, there are people who think that women are not suitable for certain types of work. And unfortunately, I used to hear it quite often in tech. It's actually kind of funny every time I hear, oh, you know, programming is just not a female thing. Like, women just doesn't have all these tendencies to be really good programmers. Every time I hear that, I actually think that programming was not a prestigious job many years ago. And many decades ago, it was actually women who were programmers much more often than men. But of course, after more and more people realized that the future is there, the future is in programming, in tech, it suddenly became a man's profession. Now, what do we do to solve gender discrimination? We admit that the problem exists, we experience it ourselves, we have a lot of researches that backs this up. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, let me tell you, there are things in this world that are simple. This one is not. There are so many levels in this problem. There are so many counterintuitive effects and obvious effects and sides of this problem. Sometimes what you think would help backlashes. And on top of that, fighting discrimination takes a really long time. And you know, different people react on this differently. Some people refuse to admit that the problem exists at all. For example, they say that the problem of female representation in tech is exaggerated. Surprise, usually men, of course. Some people suggest measures that may sound reasonable. For example, quotes. They say, okay, let's create quotes for women at workplace, quotes in management board of companies, to kind of use the positive discrimination to mitigate the current effects, to change current disproportion. And here I want to make a disclaimer once again. It's a complicated topic. There are really smart people who advocate for quotes, really smart people who advocate against quotes. Nothing here is black and white. It means that there is no one unified take on it that you could read in the research and say, okay, this is the way to go. I personally support the opinion that positive discrimination in the form of quotes can be helpful to a certain extent. But do I think that the ideal outcome is always 50-50? No. To be honest, I think that if the gender proportion is not 50-50, it's actually okay. But it's only okay when opportunities for men and women to get to this particular job are equal. So the ideal is not 50-50 proportion. The ideal is for boys and girls being able to develop themselves how they want it. And if this happens, It doesn't really matter what gender prevails in a particular industry or profession. So in my opinion, this is a better and a smarter goal than just saying, let's have 50-50. And I do believe that one of the ways to change it is to fight stereotypes. There is nothing that gets me so mad than gender stereotypes. If everyone around the girl think that she cannot do something, there is a high chance that she won't. And this is what I believe we should change, starting with ourselves, with our own stereotypes that unfortunately most of us carry from our childhood. Thank you so much for watching this video. This topic is really close to my heart and I'm happy that I had a chance to be a little bit vocal about my opinion. I hope to see you soon. Bye!